Welcome to PUSH2PROD 20. My name is Shreyans Parekh, and I'm a Senior Manager of Product and Solutions Marketing at AppDynamics, which is part of Cisco. Today, we're going to be covering how to optimize microservices performance with AppDynamics Cluster Agent. Now, we're going to be focusing on how the Cluster Agent can actually be utilized with a container orchestration solution, such as Kubernetes, in your production environments. We're going to be touching upon a number of critical use cases that we're encountering with our customers worldwide today. And we're going to be seeing how the value of Kubernetes is actually demonstrated within your live environments, and what the cluster agent provided by AppDynamics brings in terms of visibility and scalability when you're looking at monitoring workloads and applications that reside within these containers. So let's dive right in. Now, before we get started, there's a lot of forward-looking material and roadmap materials that we're going to be covering today. So I just want to keep the safe harbor slide up for a few seconds for you to read through, just to ensure that nothing that we say or demonstrate today are going to be used by you in any sort of purchase decisions that are made. Great. So before we dive into the product and the functionality, I want to give you a full overview of Kubernetes today. And many of these stats that you see here are extremely relevant, because whether you are a fast-growing startup, a mid-sized company really ramping your expansion right now, or a large-scale enterprise, Kubernetes and container orchestration is really taking the world by storm. Based on a Gartner Best Practices for Running Containers and Kubernetes in Production report published in February 2019, we saw a number of critical facets that are mentioned and that many of our customers today experience. Number one, operational savings. Number two, fast and repeatable deployments. Number three, developer efficiency. So these are really the critical points that are brought up by enterprises and companies of all sizes that are using Kubernetes in production. We see that the total market for containers by 2022 is going to reach $4.3 billion, right? So this is a huge, fast-growing and highly scalable market for the usage of containers by 2022. Today, we see that over 40% of enterprises are using Kubernetes as their container orchestration solution of choice. Kubernetes also has very high adoption in public cloud settings, such as AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud Platform. We see that more than 75% or 3 times the amount of enterprises polled are using AWS as their public cloud of choice. 40% are using Azure, and 28% are using Google Cloud Platform. So between all 3 providers, we see that there's a large demonstrable use of public clouds when utilizing Kubernetes and container orchestration within these public cloud settings. Finally, we see that 87% of enterprises are running containers today. 50% are running Kubernetes, and 65% are running more than one platform. So we see that the adoption of Kubernetes is vast today and just continues to grow and scale over time. When we look at the main challenges that enterprises face today when deciding whether to A, adopt a container orchestration mechanism and really scale their use of containers, and B, if they're adopting container orchestration mechanism, why should we choose Kubernetes as our vendor of choice? So we see that, number one, when you're looking at Kubernetes as your vendor of choice, there are a number of container orchestration vehicles that exist today, from a DIY methodology, depending on the complexity and scale of the environments that you're running in, or there's EKS, Fargate, AKS, OpenShift, Docker Enterprise, and the list goes on, and continues to grow week by week, it seems. And so the question arises from enterprises globally is, why should we use Kubernetes as our container orchestration vehicle? What sets Kubernetes apart, And if we're making the investments in Kubernetes now, how can we have the confidence that a year from now, 3 years, 5 years from now, that Kubernetes is still going to be our viable container orchestration solution? Number two, enterprises are also looking at their app migration end to end. So the questions that they're asking include, do I need to refactor legacy applications into microservices, or can I move as is? And number two, which applications should I be moving and how should I be moving them? The third key challenge are around security and visibility. Now, out of a 451 research study that was conducted in 2019, security and visibility out of all enterprises polled globally, over 1,000 enterprises, 75% stated security was their primary challenge or main concern when adopting Kubernetes, and 71% said visibility was their main concern. Now, out of all enterprises polled, they're really the top of mind for them is end-to-end visibility, and they want to ensure that their monitoring vendor of choice, whether it's commercial or open source, is actual best in class and has the roadmap and the capabilities to be able to scale and build custom solutions based on their needs, based on their industry vertical. Now, the fourth main challenge that we saw across enterprises include measuring success and failures. So before and after, from a technology perspective, right, we want to look at performance and user experience, and we want to be able to measure before and after from the business perspective, looking at both cost and revenue. Now, when exploring these four key challenges, our product and engineering teams really took a lot of these data and findings from primary research, from Gartner, and from 451 research, as I mentioned, into the development and engineering of the cluster agent solution. And so I'm really excited to show you what that looks like today. Now, the AppDynamics cluster agent, as you can see here, is able to work on Kubernetes distributions of all kinds. So whether you are adopting a DIY approach, whether you're using EKS, Fargate, AKS, many of the different solutions that I had mentioned earlier in the presentation, the use cases of cluster agent are vast. Number one, for application migration. Say you are looking at migrating one or many applications to more of a microservices or serverless approach. The cluster agent will provide you with the appropriate baselining before and after for you to be able to demonstrate the value add of migrating applications from one environment to the next. Secondly, faster mean time to innocence and issue triage. The cluster agent enables your DevOps teams to be able to better and faster troubleshoot mission-critical issues that may be arising in specific applications, specific areas of your container or your pods, and really drill down into deep diagnostic metrics to be able to surface up the critical issues at the right time, again, in real time. Thirdly is capacity planning. So when you're looking at running containers and running your workloads on containers throughout the course of the year, you of course need to be able to appropriately plan and assess how your various facets, just storage, utilization, CPU, memory, etc., are going to be affected throughout the year. If your business is seasonal, for instance, or if you're anticipating peaks in performance or in usage throughout the year. This is where capacity planning becomes so critical, and that the cluster agent is able to manage for you. It really provides you with those deep, again, analytics to be able to surface up the metrics that are most critical. The next use case is around proactive monitoring of missing dependencies. So instead of being able to react to any dependencies in your backend infrastructure, the cluster agent's able to proactively pull up any of these dependencies that are so critical in your environment. And the next use case is around mapping app performance on Kubernetes to business outcomes. So we know that whether you are you're part of the DevOps team, your IT operations, or your business owners, you need to be able to map and correlate the application performance on Kubernetes to relevant business outcomes, and to be able to see the business impact in real time of any engineering and operations efforts that are happening within workloads and applications that are present in containers in your environment. And so that's why it's so critical to be able to access the data and visualize the data as part of what Cluster Agent provides. Now, some of the core attributes and features include real-time visibility into Kubernetes clusters. Your metrics are categorized for easy triage. So we have app issues, configuration issues, overconsumption, quota violations, and network problems, just as some of the sample metrics that are available to you here for easy triage and visualization. Next, you're able to correlate cluster metrics with application performance. So you're able to see, okay, here are the relevant metrics pertaining to my containers that I'm utilizing with the cluster agent, and here's the correlation of those metrics with your application performance itself in real time. Next, the container runtimes that are supported include Docker, CRI-O, and Containerd. You're able to visualize all of those runtimes, and those are supported by Cluster Agent as well. And finally, there's the easy deployment using our certified Kubernetes operator. So all of these features are available to you out of the box as soon as you install Cluster Agent, and you're able to get the visibility into your errors, cluster capacity, issues, utilization, and quotas. Now, the Cluster Agent is a single replica deployment per cluster. So you see here that, for instance, if you're using the Cluster Agent in an OpenShift cluster, you can have various namespaces that are designed and that are named appropriately that have numerous pods present per namespace. Now, through our metric server API, the API will call out to these namespaces and the workloads within the pods that are residing within the namespaces. The AppDynamics Cluster Agent is then able to communicate through the metric server API, and all of this data is shown and visualized via our AppDynamics controller. The data collected by our cluster, namespace, and node are vast, right? So we collect all the data on your events, pods, deployment, daemon sets, jobs, services, and you can see, the list is extensive here, all the way to your resource limits. And as we continue to evolve and mature the Cluster Agent, the amount of data and the granularity of the data collected by the cluster will continue to expand over time. The Cluster Agent operator now is able to configure based on, no matter what language agent you're running, whether it's Java, Node.js, PHP, Python, Go, or C++, or .NET Core. The containers themselves, whether you're using just a handful of containers or thousands of containers at once, we're able to ingest the data via our Cluster Agent operator. Now, the operator, the way that it works is the infrastructure agents, whether it's the Cluster Agent or the InfraViz, we're able to then collect that data into our single operator. And we offer a number of custom resources for you to be able to configure and be able to manage around your Kubernetes pods and workspaces. Our Kubernetes agent, as well as all the custom data metrics around your servers, network, and analytics, are also really critically ingested and visualized via, again, the AppDynamics controller. Now, just recently, we made auto instrumentation of APM generally available to all of our customers globally. The auto instrumentation of APM will enable you to drive APM instrumentation within your cluster agent. And again, this is all automated through our AppDynamics central nervous system for AIOps. When you're able to view the Kubernetes pod, the containers and all of the pod drill downs in the cluster agent, you're able to view out of the box. So you can target specific Java, .NET, and Node.js container namespaces and labels for automated instrumentation. You can visualize specific Java, .NET, and Node.js containers using a regex for structure. And you can use Kubernetes resource management for APM instrumentation from the one used for monitoring. So you can actually be able to utilize the same resource management for APM instrumentation and no longer worry about ensuring that you have the most up-to-date APM agent configured for your live environments, because with the auto instrumentation of APM, this will the cluster agent will drive the APM instrumentation itself. And you can see a visualization of what this looks like on your screen here. Now, what's coming next in the product over the next 6 to 12 months? Number one, we're going to be offering deeper visibility into your pods by capturing application logs. So you can see here on your left that within your clusters, you want to get a drill down into your pods with your APM agent, and all of the relevant metrics of your workloads running on these pods. You're able to see pod events, you're able to see the APM correlation, again with auto instrumentation. But now we're going to make your level of data and analytics more granular by capturing all your application logs that are present within those pods. Secondly, we want to help open source users continue to run at scale. Now, through our integrations with services like Prometheus, Service Mesh Istio, and OpenTelemetry support, we want to make the experience out of the box seamless, whether using any of the open source solutions that you see here or a number of others that AppDynamics currently supports. Now, one of these capabilities that we're going to be launching within the next 6 to 12 months is around Kubernetes scalability and performance improvements. Now, with a cluster agent, scalability and performance are top of mind. The ability to handle increased scalability and performance, providing the health of all elements of the cluster, is paramount. So whether, in the Kubernetes cluster itself, whether, you want to drill into your nodes and to be able to drill into the kubelet, Docker, master, and all of the node processes that are present within this cluster. The ability to drill down into Kubernetes data and metadata to provide multidimensional representation of your Kubernetes cluster is paramount, and is what we're able to provide with the cluster agent, again, out of the box. Next, we want to now also be able to provide visibility into your container names, IDs, and stateful sets in events and inventory. So whether you want to be able to drill down into complete visibility into containers and pods via the kubelet orchestrator, we're able to now visualize which container an event applies so that I can triage the location of problems in the clusters. And number two, observe stateful sets on my cluster so that I can understand which persistent items are unavailable in a standard Kubernetes error state. So this is absolutely critical, because whether you're running stateful sets on your clusters or plan to run stateful sets, you want to be able to see which are unavailable in standard Kubernetes error states and which are subject to optimization from your by your DevOps teams. Now, we talked about event and pod drill downs briefly, and I want to drill down even deeper into this specific capability. The ability to troubleshoot pod events and filter events and pod lists is absolutely critical in getting your DevOps teams to be even more focused on the health state of various pod names and containers, and looking at which namespaces and pod names are actually over-consuming, so that you can get a broad overview of the error events that are in your live production environments, and have a proactive tips and also proactive engagement by the cluster agent to see where and proactive remediation of certain error events in your environment based on the health rules, as well as some of the preset conditions that are already part of your Kubernetes cluster agent deployment in your environment. So the ability to click on specific clusters and see the specific list of errors in order to find the root cause of a problem associated with a specific set of containers is absolutely paramount and critical here, along with the ability to filter Kubernetes events on status type and name to focus on diagnosing a specific class of issues. So you want to be able to drill down into these Kubernetes events, look at status types, look at the issues, whether they're pod issues or image issues, and you want to see all of this data and rich analytics in one view. And this is what the cluster agent is able to provide you. Now, I want to thank you again for your time, and thank you for visiting Push2Prod. Again, my name is Shreyan Sporek, and I'm a Senior Manager of Solutions and Marketing here at AppDynamics, and I would love to take any questions that you have, and feel free to connect with me via LinkedIn, Twitter, and please reach out with any further questions, or if you want a custom demo of the cluster agent in your environment as a demonstration of the further capabilities that the cluster agent can provide. Thank you again for your time.